Hi, my name is Paul McKenzie, the Life Transformation Lounge.
And I am Vanessa McLean at the Life Transformation Lounge.
And today we're going to talk about what's been going on in the news today, the elections.
Oh, that's a good one to talk about.
The elections, you're using your vote as your choice, really. That's what they're asking.
And the thing is, you have a choice. You have a choice to vote, and you also have a choice to not vote. But when I say not vote, it means still showing up.
Still showing up for your vote. So many people refused to vote this year. I guess they lost confidence in the political leaders. And with all that's going on in the world and in the economy, it's very difficult to have faith in somebody else. And I think a lot of people reflected that in their actions around this voting. And it surprised a couple of the politicians.
It surprised a couple of politicians. It also surprised a lot of people in my community. They often say, well, what are the politicians doing for me, singularly? And the thing is, if you don't show up to vote, then you're not exercising that wonderful freedom that a lot of people fought for. The fact that you can actually show up and say none of the above, you're registering a vote. But if you sit back and start to complain about what's happening because certain parties are now in power, do you really have a say in it?
It's a bit like in life, isn't it? If you don't open your mouth and say, I'm not going to accept this, then how do you expect things to change in life? Too many of us don't cast our votes and we expect our lives to change. And we kind of forget how important it is to have that voice heard. So whether or not you think your vote is going to be valid, your vote is valid. Every vote is valid.
Every vote is valid. Until you do something, nothing changes. And it goes just beyond the vote. What are you doing in your local community? I remember speaking to someone, not in this country, but there was a lot of things happening in their streets, which really meant that if the people of the community came together, cleaned up the street, they wouldn't need to rely on anybody else to do that. But they're always waiting for somebody else to do the jobs in their own community. And collectively, if everyone did a little bit to make their own communities livable, make it pleasant, would you really need the politician to
Do we really need them anyway? I mean, we give away so much of our power that, yes, we do need them now. Yeah. What would happen if we took that power back? What would happen if we became our communities again? And I remember growing up in a time when we were our communities. And I remember my parents formed part of that community. They were an active member of that community. It's all changed a bit now. I think we rely on politicians to dictate the way we live our life, and I'm not quite sure whether or not that is the way forward. I always believe in taking control of your own life as opposed to letting somebody else make the choices for you. So the strange thing today, when I heard the election results, I didn't get excited because I knew that somebody else was still in charge. And I still had the same issues. In fact, today, just after the election results, I still got a telephone call from a debt collector. So it made no difference in my life.
I think you've just got to remember that you are in charge of your life. Who dictates to you what you must or must not do? I think it's important that with anything that we do in terms of making change, because this is what politics is about. It's about changing the way funds are distributed, changing the way policies are implemented. And if you can get up as a sovereign person knowing that my life has to be led in a certain way, then who is going to dictate that this is what you must do? And when you perform certain actions, you have to hand me a certain percentage of your hard-earned money.
I think that's the bit that always gets me. Is no matter who you vote for, you're always handing over. And so today, and from today on in your lives, take control of your life, and instead of handing over, try and make a bit more. I think.
Make a bit more. And here's the other thing: there's a lot of people who complain about how expensive things are. Things will always be expensive.
Too expensive.
But here's another thing: just remember that you are a gifted individual, and it's not a matter of how much does something cost. How can you go out and start to create the income so that it doesn't matter if something's £100, $100. You've always got money coming in that will always pay for that. It pales into insignificance. So the question to ask is, how much can I make as opposed to how much does this cost?
It's strange you say that. I've read an interview with Warren Buffett, and his average lunch bill comes to more than the average person's annual income.
What's he eat?
What does he eat? Food. How expensive? So he talks about a lunch deal on a business deal that costs £150,000 for lunch.
When was the last time you had a lunch that cost that much money?
Chicken and chips. It's £1.
Listen, we're not mentioning anything that has legs, wings. Remember,
I'm not saying that I eat that.
We're in the life transformation lab. Let's just keep it real. We're about life. Okay?
I'm saying all I'm saying is sometimes we support these people in power, and they eat lunches that cost £150,000, and the majority of us survive on chicken wings and chips. Not that I eat it, not that you eat it. But if you look around you and see the diet of people, they are surviving on food that is serving them no purpose whatsoever. And simply because they don't have the money to buy good quality food.
Let's just keep talking about food, because it is the staff of life. It is the staff of your life. And when we look at within our communities, we can see the diverse range of income in our communities, because wherever I go around the world, that's one thing I notice. I could be at one end of the street and I can see enormous wealth. By the time I go to the other end, there's abject poverty. Yeah. But how can you find the resources to feed yourself in a way that is wholesome and healthy? And we do have choices, but they're not necessarily that expensive.
The choices we need to make in life are quite simple. They're around your beliefs. There is food that you can get that sustain your body, and it is not as expensive as the foods that you currently eat now. It's just a matter of changing your lifestyle to support that. And I think it's really important not to just give up on yourself simply because you haven't got money, or simply because you live in the impoverished side of town. There are remarkable stories of people that have come from those backgrounds and have made their lives change for the better. And that includes things like their diets and stuff. So,
One of the things I do, I really utilise the farmers market, and I encourage you to do that as well. Yeah. Sometimes you may feel it's going to be more expensive. I say being sick is more expensive than going to a farmer's market. And here's the other thing, like when you go to the farmer's market, a diverse range of foods. I make sure that each week I go out, I stock up on my chlorophyll. What's chlorophyll? All my green foods, all the foods that are going to sustain me, give me energy. There's no box foods.
No box foods?
No box foods. It's all live food, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking more and more about at the Life Transformation Lab. It's about our minds, our body, and our soul. How those three together, when they work together synergetically, how we can grow and how we can support each other, each one teaching one.
And also it's about getting you to that place where you can support yourself and your beliefs. You become self-sufficient. And you can actually change your diet, and you can believe you can have a healthier body. Your bank account could be fat, or you could just live a better life. It's all within you. And it's that greatness that's inside of you that we tend to put aside. And so just quickly, briefly, going back to the politicians, they have a belief system that they will never fail. In fact, some of those political leaders, when they get cast out of one office, they appear in another office. So they're never going to come out of politics. They're always going to be in politics. However, they just have a belief that they are going to, at some point, run the country. And I think the belief system that they have serves them very, very well.
What's your belief system, and how is it serving you?
What do you believe in? What do you actually think is possible for you in your life?
Today is your opportunity to have a belief system that I always say promotes great health. That's one of the best things I can actually offer you today. The choices that you make not only affects you today, but it also affects the next generation. And are you making wise enough choices that will sustain yourself and the next generation and that afterwards? Our environment. So people are walking around so unconscious of what they're doing to the environment. Yes, I am passionate about the environment. I didn't used to be, but as you get older and wiser, the wisdom comes. Yeah. And then you understand when your mother used to tell you about eating things and being careful how you dispose of things, you didn't pay much attention, but when we're older, like we are now,
you start noticing those people throwing those bits of paper on the floor.
Do I get angry? Just a little bit.
The environment's so important.
There's a dustbin just there. Do you think it was just put there just because somebody felt like putting an object in the middle of the space? No, it was there for you to put your rubbish in.
It's the magic of youth, isn't it? They say that wisdom comes through experience.
It does.
And as you get older, you become your wisdom increases. So you do see things like that, and you do take your environment as the number one priority in your life, because your environment is who you are.
Let me just take this on, because at the Life Transformation Lab, as you can see, we go off on a bit of a tangent, so I hope you're happy with that. But that just reminded me of when I was young, and I remember my parents, when they came from Jamaica, both our parents came from Jamaica. And one of the things about our parents, they were extremely proud and very patriotic Jamaican people. Yeah, and I remember as a young child, I'm a 60s baby, so a baby. And one of the things that was never seen or never done was walking on the street, eating food.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. Walking on the street, eating food.
What?
No.
That could never, ever be done. And in those early days, you used to get fish and chips and they were wrapped in newspaper.
Do you remember those days? I remember my mum. I remember the first time she introduced us to fast food. It was McDonald's. It was a McDonald's meal. And it was the most bizarre thing, because up until then we had cooked food every day. And then all of a sudden was this burger that just appeared from nowhere. And I had to say it was the best thing I'd tasted up to that point in my life. But it just appeared. And it's interesting how when you look at that fast food generation, you can see the breakdown in values around that time. Absolutely. And the community started to diminish because people stopped eating together, because it became a fast food generation.
So going back to the fish and chips, I remember one particular day, I thought, let me just copy my friends, European friends. And they stopped at the chip shop on the way home, and I decided I was going to do that. And I was walking home with a bag of chips, not knowing that my dad was coming home from his shift at work. And the look on his face like, what if I taught you? Didn't you hear? I mean, why are you copying these people? But it's one of those things that years later now, when you're out and about, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that sees it, wherever we go, on the buses, on the train, people are having their 3-course meals.
Yeah. In public.
In public.
It's the worst sight. Seeing young people eating in public. And in such a savage way as well. It's just that culture that we're in right now. There's no respect for the value around eating with your family anymore. You eat as and when you see it, as opposed to waiting to get home.
But I'm taking another step further because of my transition, and maybe you're going through a transition as well. But going from a meat-based and a fish-based and a processed way of life of consuming food to what I now do, when I smell these other
types of legged food,
in these confined spaces, I find the smell offensive. Now, answer this question: do you find that offensive?
Yeah. We're almost in a health revolution now, because so many people I talk to are changing their diets, and they're leaving behind the meat. However, they still eat meat in some different form. Perhaps it's white meat, or perhaps it's meat that does that in water. But I think all types of meat should be seen. I think people should cease eating all types of meat.
I mean, it's funny when I've left my Rolls Royce or my Lamborghini at home and have to travel on public transport, all dressed up, and sat next to someone who's just taken out this fried whatever, I don't know, carcass, and then the whole space that we're in begins to smell. And you think, well, yes, I know we do get hungry every now and again, but I think there's certain types of etiquette that we can exercise every now and again. Don't you?
Yeah. I think we should go back to the old values.
Yeah.
I think they should ban eating in public, period. I think if you buy a piece of food, you should take it to a quiet place. It should be like the smoking ban. You just can't eat.
Wasn't that a brilliant idea?
It was a brilliant idea. You cannot smoke in in this environment because it affected other people. And I think fast food in public affects other people.
It really does. I remember, yes, we are showing our age, and that's okay. We like to do that. But even the days when we used to go to school, smoking on the buses and the tube, and you get home and your clothes will reek of tobacco. And now that doesn't happen.
Not to mention the health implications of that change. And the interesting thing about that law is that you could, the law in this country, without diversing too much, the law in this country
we're having fun. We're
the
going
law in this country
I don't know where we're going to end up, but stick with us. We're getting there.
I've got to tell you this. The law in this country says that you can smoke. You can smoke in this country from the age of 5. That's the law in this country. It's legal.
Are you talking about second-hand smoke?
No, I'm talking about first-hand. I'm talking about a
inhaling.
5-year-old child. The law in this country is 5 years old.
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
It's an actual fact.
Well, as adults, I think it's important that we educate ourselves, educate our children. Is that what you want for your children? Even though that's what the law says, is that something that you want for your children? Because there's certain things that you can be in control of. How does that serve someone's life to be consuming tobacco at such an early age, and the damage that does to your internal organs?
Long term. Yeah. But I think with this current breakdown of it's all to do with popular culture and values. I think if you have an environment, for example, a family that has very low expectations and their values are not as the high priority as they should be, then there is always that room for things like smoking. They always creep in because there is no value in the household. So one of the values about eating at home and in front of your family and with your family, that has got to be the number one priority in your diet. This is to eat with your family. Do
you do that? Okay, maybe you haven't got a family, but here's another thing. Do you eat at a table or do you eat in front of a computer, on the floor? And when I say on the floor, I mean maybe you've got your laptop on the floor. So whatever it is, because technology has got us in such a state that we eat anywhere apart from communing with one another. And that place is a powerful place. I read a book by Dr. Naomi Remen. It's called The Kitchen Table Wisdom. And all the pearls of wisdom that comes when you commune with your family around a table. The stories that come from that. You don't get that if you're sitting on a bus waiting to jump off with a chicken wing hitched in your tooth.
No. So we're going to leave you with 2 thoughts today. One thought is about how you value yourself, how you value your diet.
And the second thought is, still to do with your diet, what can you do to maintain a healthy lifestyle based on your diet? And let's not even call it a diet. It is a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. Let's call it a lifestyle. Call it what it is.
Yeah.
The lifestyle.
Call a spade a spade.
Till you have to dig with it. So, today the tips are your lifestyle. Let's call it lifestyle.
Lifestyle.
And just understanding more about, I think, values. I keep up and on about them, but I think we're missing some values in society. I think we need to put those values back before we start voting again.
Values are an incredible thing. That for me, every time I think about value, I think about my father and the values that he had, the values that he installed within all of his children. And at the time, I thought, this man was such a disciplinarian. Why is he so strict? Now, much older, I understand why. So that when you're in front of other people, when you're on your job, when you're with your colleagues at work, when you're in college, first of all, you respect yourself. And if you can respect yourself, then the world will respect you.
That's very well said. So do join us again at the Life Transformation Lounge for lots of tips.
Lots of tips. We went off on a tangent today. That's fine. That's what happens when you're transforming. You find yourself. You're discovering who you are. So again, thanks for listening. My name is Paul McKenzie. And I am Vanessa McLean. And this is the Life Transformation Lounge. See you on the next episode.